Hi, welcome to Everbox Guitar Tuition. So I've got another classic album inspection for you today. One of my favourite albums. This is the first album I heard by this band. It's Judas Priest, Sin After Sin, and it's 45 years old today, April 8th, 1977. So Priest were in really dire straits with their label Gull Records, and then CBS came in for them and they gave them a 60 grand advance to sign with them. This meant forfeiting their rights, any rights they had to the Rock and Roll and Sad Wings albums. That was one of the legal requirements of breaking their Gull contract. So £60,000 is today's money. I mean, it must be at least £300,000, possibly £500,000. You know, decent sized advance that would enable them to get some better gear, to pay themselves a wage, feed themselves, and function as a professional band, and then hopefully recoup this advance against sales. That would probably take a while, not until the British Steel album, I would say. But they're drummerless at this point, so I'm guessing Alan Moore, their drummer on the Sad Wings era, did the tour for that, and then he left. So they go and rehearse at Pinewood Studios, and Simon Phillips, the session drummer, who is still 19, is about to turn 20, is assigned to do the Sin After Sin album. Now, whether Roger Glover is at those rehearsals at Pinewood and the band, the record company kind of put them in touch with Roger Glover, but they were kind of a bit sort of, non-committal with him. But I know they rang him up later, actually, we think we need a bit of help here. And he sort of came back in the production chair, so to speak. So I've never kind of found that out. He hasn't been paid for the record to this day, but basically, so they're rehearsing now. According to Simon Phillips, I've got some notes here from his diaries. So if you go on Sea of Tranquility website, there's a really good interview with Simon Phillips, and he actually gets his diaries out and he tells you some stuff. So they rehearsed at Pinewood on 31st of January, which is a Monday, 1977. And then February the 1st, which is the next day, they were at Rampart Studios from 3 p.m. to 1 p.m. and they recorded for 5 days. So I get from that impression that they recorded with Simon Phillips for 5 days. There was no demos back then, so he would just learn the songs, in rehearsal. They blasted through 3, 4, 5 takes, and that was how they did it. And basically, he recorded backing tracks not to a click. It was him in the middle of the room, screened off with Ian Hill and Glenn Tipton. They recorded their backing tracks like that, and KK and Roger Glover, KK was co-producing, sat in the control room and listened. And then I'm guessing KK Downing added his guitar track on, and then him and Glenn did the solos over dubs, and Rob Halford did his harmonies and so on. Simon Phillips came back on February the 16th just to do one song. He used a different kit. He couldn't remember what song it was, but he said if you listen to the album, he could tell by the drum sound. So I'm not sure. But that's how that process went. That's the only intel I could get on that. So what's the album like? For a long time, this was kind of like in the shadow of Sad Wings, I think, and Staying Classic was kind of in that middle of like what I call the progressive Priest era. But now time's past, taken on its own merits, it's a superb record. I would always prefer Sad Wings and Staying Class, but I would say this is my fourth favourite Judas Priest album of all time. I think when I was younger, I felt the production was a bit muddy and woolly, but listening to it now, it's got a pretty good sound for 77. Some tracks are better than others. I think Starbreaker and Dissident Aggressor are the most successfully produced tracks and recorded tracks in terms of the drum sound and the guitar sound. The guitar sound's got a nice kind of squeeze sort of chainsaw type tone on Starbreaker. On Dissident Aggressor, it really rips that that main riff when it comes in. But it opens, of course, with Sinner, 6 minutes 45. This is written by Tipton and Halford. I think with this you can hear Tipton's classical influence and influence of Queen with some of the chord progressions. There's a bit where it kind of cycles up on the A and E string, a bit like Now I'm Here. Only spotted that the other day. But I think what I noticed on this, listening to it again, was not only how good Rob Halford's vocals were, but how well he tracked all the harmonies. He's harmonising with himself. There's a lot of layering on this track. Drum performance is great. The classics KK solo in the middle, which was like a sort of a showpiece for him live. Really nice lead breaks by Glenn later on, nice fills. Just a really clever piece of music with cool lyrics. A classic metal track, an archetypal metal track with metal imagery, complex arrangement. It's got a chorus, so it fits into that sort of mould, but it's got that kind of bit where it breaks down in the middle, and it's got intricate sections. So brilliant classic. I mean, do I prefer the live version on Sin After Sin? Yeah, it's got more punch, but the production elements on this are really cool. I still remember hearing the intro in my mind when we got the vinyl and my brother put it on, and it, you know, I probably heard the live version on the Friday Rock Show or something, and it was quite spooky, that those KK Whammies. So that's the opening track. Track number 2 is their cover of Diamonds and Rust. So they'd already had another crack at recording this at the time of Sad Wings, I think, or was it after the Rock and Roller Sessions? I can't remember now. It might be the B-side of Something for Gull. I actually really like the Gull version. The tempo's a little more punchy, it's a bit more drier. It's a little less produced, actually. So I'd probably say, in a weird way, maybe prefer the Gull version, which is strange because you wouldn't expect the production to be as good. But this is a really great version, as is the Unleashed in the East version. The 3 versions of these songs are all different, excellent. I think listening to this time, I noticed again a lot of guitar layering, sort of Queen influence in the choruses, like extra octave parts and harmonies. Really great Rob Halford vocal. Lovely guitar work by Glenn, and it shows Priest's ability to take a song that's not in the metal genre and make it metal, and I think that probably informed later on how they wrote songs. If you're going to write a catchy song, then you need to kind of think of it as a sort of pop song, or it should be able to be reinterpreted into another kind of song, and it'll be catchy. I think a lot of rock bands, metal bands, make the mistake of covering other metal tracks, and generally these are classic tracks anyway, so there's not anything you can do with them. But again, obviously it was Joan Baez. The next tracks are Tipton, Halford, Downing, so I think this might be the first, maybe not the first occasion, but possibly it is where you see that writing credit, and obviously that's the writing credit that will be adopted from the British Steel album onwards. Obviously it's not alphabetical order, and that tells you something about the process. You've obviously got Tipton doing the majority of the music, Rob Halford doing the lyrics and the melodies, and KK Downing probably chipping in with the riffs, arrangement ideas and extra bits. What the division on this in terms of publishing cut was, I don't know. But Tipton's a very, very accomplished writer, and obviously it shows in this album, and certainly he wrote tracks entirely on his own, more lyrics and vocals, melodies, like The Ripper, Hellbent for Leather, for instance. This is great, 4 minutes 49, it's got a great drum intro. I think you can hear Simon Phillips' quality on this intro, because he just does this simple groove, but he's right in the pocket, he's got a really good tone, you can hear his power and his internal metronome. It's a great track. It might be my favourite Judas Priest track of all time. If you go on my trawl through all the albums, I'll probably mention that, which is on this site. Great guitar break by KK and Glenn, the trade-off and go into harmony. And then probably at the end on the fade out of the track, probably some of the greatest singing in the whole metal genre. Halford's climbing scream at the end on the fade out. It's just incredible. So that's superb. Then Last Rose of Summer. This is a Tipton Halford composition. When I read KK Downing's autobiography, he wasn't happy with this one because it was a bit wet. He thought they were using too much Queen influence. And obviously Tipton and Halford were ensconced in a corner writing this, and not with KK. So you can see the start of those ruptions there. But it's a really cool track. This is the kind of track when you're younger, it's the ballad track. I don't think it sounds like Queen. I think it sounds like 10cc. If you listen to I'm Not in Love, after I'm Not in Love chorus of that, it's got those inverted chords, boom, boom, and you can hear that in this track on the tempo. It's also got a singular sort of swelling single note of synth at the end, which reminds me of the kind of harmonised R lines of I'm Not in Love. That's just my theory, and Not in Love's a big hit in 1975, so it would tie in with that. It would have been in their eardrums within that sort of 12, 18 months. It's a really nice track, lovely guitar by Glenn, really nice acoustic tracks, really low in the mix in this. If you listen on the chorus, you can hear it, really nice acoustic, probably played by Glenn. Good guitar orchestrations. It sort of finishes the side one in a mellow way, the original vinyl. But I do really like it. It's Last Rose of Summer, it's a cool track. So side two's where things get confusing. On the original vinyl we had when we were kids, my brother, this track was Let Us Pray, and then it was Call for the Priest, Raw Deal. So I always thought Raw Deal was Call for the Priest, and then the end bit of Raw Deal was Raw Deal, if that makes sense. But in actual fact, Let Us Pray is kind of like the intro. Call for the priest, I'm burning. Then it goes to the fast bit, which is Call for the Priest. And then Raw Deal's just been, it's that whole track. Howl's Let Us Pray, it's 6 minutes and 12, so it's another progressive track. Really innovative track, this. Probably one of the first really up-tempo metal songs. I mean, you have to argue Set Me Free and Stone Cold Crazy by the Queen and Sweet would predate that, but it seems to have a bit more of a double kick drum pattern, I think, from Simon Phillips. It's got great multi-tracked harmonised guitar lines, again, the Queen, to sheer Heart Attack influence, Night at the Opera. Great soloing from KK and Glenn, a trade-off, and shows their effectiveness of that. Again, very sort of progressive arrangement. This track doesn't really have a chorus, it's proper kind of prog metal. It's kind of got thematic sections, I guess. And then you've got Raw Deal, which is a Tipton Halford composition. Sorry, just Let Us Pray. It's Tipton Halford Downing again, so quite that one. How long is this track? This is 6 minutes. Actually, I think it was 5 minutes 58 on the original vinyl. It is 5:58. So this is kind of bluesy. I mean, what's interesting about this, I've read, it's about Halford cruising gay bars, talking about Far Island in New York. But Priest hadn't been to America at this point. Priest don't go to America until they got CBS's money. So maybe he's just imagining it, what it would be like. Maybe he read stuff in the kind of magazines he might have had access to at the time, or stuff he'd read in kind of subculture stuff. I never knew what the lyrics were about, but it's really cool imagery. It works really well. It's got like a hot, sweaty atmosphere. It's got a cool kind of middle section, bit like Never Satisfied. In actual fact, it's quite a bluesy track. You could almost, if it had a light sort of production, you can imagine parts of this kind of almost being on Rock and Roller with its tempo and its bluesy riff. And then at the end, it kind of picks up to a different tempo feel. And then Halford does one of his most guttural screams at the end, almost like a wailing banshee. It's fantastic. So, again, just a really interesting track. Whether they played it live, I'm not sure. I think they played Call for the Priest. I think there might be a bootleg of this. Then you get Here Come the Tears. This again is Tipton Halford, so again that writing team coming together. This is probably the weakest track on the album, but it's really cool. It's got a nice sort of jazzy type of chord progression to start off, and then it's got like the jangly 6/8 acoustic with a nice sort of plaintive vocal by Rob. And then it goes to that heavy bit with those great power chords and Rob wailing. Really nice guitar low in the mix in the background. And then the track kind of cascades off and then it fades and it does a crossfade into Dissident Aggressor. So remembering when you did crossfades back then, it's all tape. So you would have to make probably what's called a slave reel, I think is what it's called, or when you're mastering an album, you would record one track across and have the other one coming across probably from a tape player, and an engineer would perform the crossfade. I mean, you just do it on a bloody computer now, all sort of complex tape to tape stuff. But obviously, Dissident Aggressor. I mean, this track is, I'm just looking at the length, 3 minutes and 7. It kind of feels longer in some ways. What an epic track this is. Tipton Halford Downing composition. Great solo by KK. Maybe he came up with the riff on this, who knows? But it's such a heavy riff. I think at this point in heavy metal, I think this is probably the heaviest track ever committed to a recording by any band. I think it's heavier than Sabbath. There's just because it's got a brassy guitar and the power of the drums, the tom fills by Simon Phillips. And of course Simon Phillips on this album, on this track as well, he's kind of emphasising the downbeat more. Bill Ward has that jazzy swing, Ian Pace, he does a lot of fills and stuff like that. They've got a slightly different feel, and you can hear like the sort of way metal drumming will develop on this album. So it's a fantastic track, again a stratospheric vocal performance from Rob Halford. Amazing lyrics, kind of war lyrics about Berlin and stuff. I know I am in Berlin, really cool. Kind of almost like you're in a tank and you're outside the city. Really like it, and yeah, it kind of finishes the album. It's probably the strongest finishing Judas Priest cut on an album. I mean, it's pretty. You do get great finishing tracks on albums, but this must be one of the absolutely best in the metal genre. I mean, it's staggering. It's a shout out for the best track on the whole album. So overall, this is an album I've always loved. I guess when I was younger, it was kind of like my sixth or seventh, eighth favourite Priest album. I kind of, I wasn't quite as into Raw Deal and Last Rose of Summer. As I've got older, like Last Rose of Summer, I certainly love Raw Deal. Maybe not quite Here Come the Tears quite as much, but there's only a couple of tracks that are kind of 6, 7 out of 10. It's easy a 9 out of 10, and a lot of people prefer this album to the Seven Rings of Destiny album. Yeah, it's a classic record, this. I don't think it gets the recognition, or I don't think it's yet got the recognition it should have, but it will do. It's part of a really classic run for Priest. I don't think there's anything more to say to that. Like I say, go on Sea of Tranquility. I think it's about the 30-minute mark that Simon Phillips gets his diaries out and talks about the Sin After Sin recording. But in actual fact, just one final thing, he celebrated his 20th birthday either on the day of the first rehearsal or the first day of recording. Such a young guy. But it's a shame he didn't join Priest at this point. Nothing wrong with Les Binks, but I think Phillips is, he's a notch up there with the power and that. But he was always a session man and didn't want to be tied down to a band. Okay, so there we go. Thanks very much. Sin After Sin, 45 years old today. Cheers, thanks very much.